Hello, welcome to my video series on the heroine's journey. I'm Susanna Liller, and it's time to find your happiness. Here we are in April, mid-April, and where I live in Maine, we are just beginning to get green. That beautiful emerald green that comes in early spring. And soon, those new little leaves will appear on the trees, and they will be one of my most favorite colors, the one that Crayola calls, fittingly, spring green. Spring in Maine is bliss-filled time. We wait during a dark, cold, snowy winter for these days. I remember way back trying to convince my mother to move to Maine from Connecticut. And using somewhat backwards logic, I said to her, when you live here, you are so happy when spring arrives, neglecting to mention what happens before that arrival that would make people so happy. Maine has a mud season that can last forever and can make one think that spring is never coming. My mother never countered with spring comes a month earlier to us in Connecticut, which it does. And she and my dad and grandmother did move to Maine and loved it. And I loved it that they were here. So this video, I want to talk to you about bliss and serendipity. Bliss. I'm talking and thinking about Joseph Campbell's admonition to all of us, follow your bliss, which became very popular because of his The Power of Myth PBS video and then book of the interview and discussion between Joseph Campbell, the scholar, the author, the professor at Sarah Lawrence College, between Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers. And here's the quote from The Power of Myth. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a track that has been there all the while, waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. When you can see that, you begin to meet people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open doors for you. I can say, follow your bliss and don't be afraid, and doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. I can't even tell you how my life has proved that to be the case. I committed to following my bliss in 2007, and it wasn't hard because it sort of struck me as a great love, a passion. I fell in love with the hero's journey and all things associated with Campbell when I was a coaching student at the Hudson Institute of Coaching. I was introduced to his model, the hero's journey, in Maine during my period of study at Hudson. And I was introduced to him, and another serendipitous way that I got on that path of bliss was by a friend who knew my love for the Wizard of Oz. My women's empowerment company at the time was called Ruby Slippers. And she said to me, you've got to come to Camden, up the coast here in Maine, and listen to this woman describe how the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy is an example of the hero's journey. So I did, and that was like being struck by lightning. I returned to Maine from California after I had learned more about it. I actually did my graduate presentation about the heroine's journey, how Dorothy's journey is a true heroine's journey. And I was, as I said, on fire. I saw the heroine's journey, and even though it was taught to me as the hero's journey, I worked primarily with women at the time, and so it needed to be relatable for them. So it just made sense for me to call it the heroine's journey. And I subsequently have found out that it was Maureen Murdoch who wrote the book, the heroine's journey. 25 years ago, she was the first to coin the name heroine's journey. But at the time, I didn't know that. But I just realized that this framework was the perfect lens through which a woman could see her life, and more empowered life as a heroine, as the hero or heroine of her own story. I saw it as confidence raising, that giving her a bigger identity. And even though at the time I had a full-time job as an organizational consultant, busy helping people get along with each other, mostly around conflict management, I realized that my bliss, my reason for being, my love, what I now call the core of me, was helping women find their bliss and do what their soul was calling them to do, instead of what our culture or the people around them wanted them to do. So I began giving workshops and retreats based on the heroine's journey. And Katie, a workshop participant who became a dear friend, one day said to me, "Susanna, you need to trademark the heroine's journey." She saw me developing all these courses, and yeah, it made sense to do that. So I did. But then disaster struck. Well, seeming disaster. I got a cease and desist letter from the Joseph Campbell Foundation from Robert Walter, the executive director at the time. It was a very lawyerly letter. It was scary. What to do? Well, I panicked. I called my lawyer, the one who had gotten me the trademark for the heroine's journey in the first place, and he started preparing a return letter to the foundation. And he said to me, "Shouldn't be a problem. Just there are many deltas. There's a Delta Faucet, Delta Airlines, different things could be named the hero's or heroine's journey." But I was stressed, and my husband knew about it, and he's very pragmatic, and he intervened and said, "Why don't you just call this guy Robert, Susanna, and talk to him?" What a thought. A conflict management professional being told she should talk to the person about what she was worried about. So I did. I called him on the phone, and he couldn't have been nicer. He explained to me that there was such an upsurge in all things hero's journey, which was Joseph Campbell's work and writings, his countless books, that people actually were getting confused with what was Campbell and his model and his work and what wasn't. So the foundation, had applied for a trademark, and it had been denied them because, get this, because of my trademark, I had trademarked the heroine's journey, and the foundation had been told that their application for a hero's journey trademark would impinge upon mine. It still boggles my mind. What are the chances that the work of the guy that I so admired and respected and had helped me I was impinging on that. So I didn't fight them. I didn't demand money. I was so pleased to hand it over. I felt, deserved to have it. I retracted my trademark. I had gotten so much from Joseph Campbell and his work. I saw them as the rightful owners. And what did I get in return? I got something in return. I got a ticket to Esalen, the workshop retreat center in Big Sur, California, to the Joseph Campbell workshop that they hold there every year around the time of Joseph Campbell's birthday in March. And the foundation puts on this workshop, and it really is an experiential walk through the hero's journey. And it was fabulous. I met amazing people who were also on fire with this whole concept of the hero's journey. And then I was in Big Sur, which is the most stunning landscape. And there I met in person Robert Walter. And along with him, I met Stephen Geringer, who is what's called a working associate with the Joseph Campbell Foundation. And so then time goes by. A few years later, I decide to write my own book about it. You Are a Heroine, a retelling of the hero's journey, seeing it from the heroine's perspective. I was preparing this book to be published. It was around 2016. And I called him, and he and I talked about how to get the required permissions for my quotations in the book of Campbell. And we had a chance to talk and reminisce about Esalen and Big Sur and my journey. And we talked about women and the journey, about heroines and on the journey. And he mentioned to me at the time, so this was 2016, about the book that was his go-to book about the sacred feminine, The Myth of the Goddess, Evolution of an Image by Anne Baring and Jules Cashford. Here you see it. It's pretty big. I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Anne Baring, but something told me, my blessed intuition, that it was something I should know about, the sacred feminine. So I bought the book. I put it on my shelf, and after a cursory look, I admit I didn't open it again until very recently. So you might know that since January, I've been writing in my blog and speaking in these videos about my journey, my pilgrimage, I'm calling it, to understand the sacred feminine, what it is exactly. And I'm learning and I'm discovering. I still have a lot to learn. And as part of my research and reading, I come across, yes, Anne Baring, who Andrew Harvey called one of the great pioneers of the divine feminine in our time. And yeah, because of Stephen Geringer, I have her book, The Myth of the Goddess, Evolution of an Image. And then I see that she's written one recently, The Dream of the Cosmos. Anne writes lengthy books. The Dream of the Cosmos, A Quest for the Soul. And it's what the reviewers, everyone has said is her magnum opus, 20 years in the making. And then serendipity strikes. Now, actually, so go back about a year. My friend and Hudson Institute of Coaching colleague, Blanca Vergara, who lives in the Netherlands, has a virtual summit in January of 2022 called From Wounds to Wings, about the rise of the sacred feminine, and invites me, little old Susanna Liller, to be a speaker. So again, you find yourself on a road with people with a similar kind of bliss, and they will open doors for you that you never even knew were there. And she asked me to speak, and lo and behold, Anne Baring is a part of the summit as well. And I get to listen to her as another participant, and I'm spellbound. Here is an interpretation, hers, of the heroine's journey, the need for it, for every woman to take one, that I hadn't registered before. And let me say now, I'm going to talk more about it in another video, but it has to do with our very planet and our survival on the planet and the survival of the life on this planet. But I'm about to have even another serendipitous event. But also, to me, affirmation that I am indeed on the road of my bliss, because doors keep opening. Anne Baring herself has consented to be on my podcast, the podcast for real life heroines. And we are recording, I am talking to her on Saturday. And she tells me as we're emailing She says, the future depends on women becoming aware of the importance of their values based on 200,000 years of evolutionary experience. We face great dangers unless women become aware of these. I'm going to talk to her and find out more what she means, but I tell her I will be honored to share her vision and message. Back to Stephen Geringer, my buddy from the Joseph Campbell Foundation. He has written a book, Myth and Modern Living. It just has been published. And I'm going to ask him to be a guest on my podcast too. And he has this quote in here from Campbell, which I think says what I've been trying to say. Campbell says, "You follow your bliss, you'll have your bliss, whether you have money or not. If you follow money, you may lose the money, and then you don't even have that. The secure way is really the insecure way, and the way in which the richness of the quest accumulates is the right way." So I say, along with Campbell and Stephen Geringer, follow your bliss, dear heroine. As the hero, the current hero in a very popular journey story now happening on Disney Plus, The Mandalorian. That hero, the Mandalorian, remarks often, he doesn't say follow your bliss, but he says, this is the way. And I would tell you, follow your bliss. This is the way. Thank you for being with me on this video. I hope that you'll join me when I put out the next one, which is every 2 weeks. And I'm also doing this theme in my blog, so you can take a look at that too. And I can't wait for you to hear my discussion with Anne Baring. So there is serendipity. I hope it comes to you in your life too. Thank you.